Welcome back. This is part two, the Olympics. Every week on the Parker Max YouTube channel and every episode, we have a different theme. Today's theme is Jake Riley, and we are talking about the Olympics and the fan Q&A, all the questions that you guys asked on Instagram. If you have not seen part 1 yet, I highly recommend you watching that episode first. I'll put that right in the upper right hand corner, and I recommend it because it tells some background. He talks about his high school journey, his college journey, and then talking about his early professional career and how he got injured for 3 years and could not race for those 3 years. And then finally, he ran the Chicago Marathon, ran 2:10:36, I think. And now he will be talking about his build-up to the Olympic trials in Atlanta. Act 2, stay back. So, you ran 2:10:36 in Chicago and qualified for the trials. How was your training leading into the trials in Atlanta, and what were some of your favorite sessions? And lastly, how much mileage were you putting in?
Yeah. So Lee is the training that we do, I think, is a little unique as far as like the major marathon groups out there go. So you look at people like NAZ or Hanson's or Zap, and they're putting in, or, like what 𝘎𝙧𝙧𝙖𝙬𝙧𝙀 does or whatever, they're putting in 120-mile weeks. They got pretty high volume stuff. Their typical workouts are like, what we do at the Hansons, we do like 3x4 miles. You do 2x6 miles, like high volume stuff. It would not be unusual to get like 16 miles in a morning of like kind of like quality volume with the Hansons. Whereas with Lee, I think the longest workout we do in the build-up, not counting our marathon simulator, because that's a little weird, is like 5 miles worth of volume, or no, 7 miles worth of volume. And that's pretty rare. Most of the time it's like 4 miles of quality stuff. We do almost no pace work. So like a lot of times in a marathon segment, or with most training plans, you'll do like, okay, I'm going to do 4 miles at marathon pace. I'm going to do 6 miles at 10 seconds faster than marathon pace. With Lee, we do almost no pace work. It's a lot of kind of fartlek type of stuff. It's a lot of tempo type of stuff. It's a lot based on effort. So my favorite workout that we do for the marathon is Teller Farm, which is basically named for the place that you do it. So it's a very hilly 4-mile tempo straight into a 5K slightly uphill go. So it's just as fast as you can go for this 5K. So essentially you run all the speed out of your legs for those first 4 miles. It's basically just get through it and try to kind of save something. And then you have to immediately transition from your legs being all rubbery on those hills into running a 5K as fast as you can. But neither one of those, there's no pace goal. You kind of want to do better than you did before, but there's no like, you need to hit this. It's just as fast as you can go. And that's something I really like about Lee's training is it scales with how fit you are. If you're not very fit, that 5K is not going to be very fast. When you are fit, you're going to crush that thing, and it's going to be a good kind of marker. But the training for the trials, it was essentially, we're going to do exactly what we did for the Chicago buildup. We're just going to try and be just a little bit faster on every single workout. So mileage volume, I think at my peak, I was like 107 miles a week, which I think is on the low end for what most marathoners do, but obviously it worked out really well. And that's with 5 days of doubles, and then 2.5 hour long run on Sunday, hour 50 run on Wednesday. And then a couple times in there, you'll have like, we do 1 3-hour long run, which is a real bear. You have a marathon simulator, which is essentially 18 miles. You start out at like relative jog, but then every 3 miles, you get a little bit faster until you get down to marathon pace. And then the last 6 miles are at marathon pace. And that's kind of the other big one that we do. The training went great. Training in Boulder in the winter is a little bit of a mixed bag, right? We get the snow coming in. You're from Iowa, you know how that goes. Yeah. So we did 2 segments. I think it was like 10 days a piece. One of my teammates has a friend who has a house in Scottsdale, Arizona. So we're going to go out there and get a little bit of fair weather training, get out of the snow a little bit, and put in some more quality. And it worked out pretty nicely that we didn't have to move too many of the big workouts. We were able to do pretty much everything that we wanted to get in. The other big thing we focused on was making sure we were ready for the hills. We knew Atlanta was going to be a hilly workout or hilly course. So that was kind of the other thing we changed from Chicago, was making sure that we put in more hilly long runs was the main thing. So we have Magnolia Road just up the hill here. It's very rolling. It's up at 8,000 feet. And so we got out there a lot of Wednesdays to try and put a few extra miles, get the legs ready for the pounding. And then I also work with a strength coach, and it's kind of the same thing. As we're really going to work on just getting as much strength into your legs as possible. So lots of deadlift, lots of hip thrust type of stuff, just trying to make sure that my quads and my glutes were as prepared as they could be to handle that pounding that we knew was going to happen with the hills in Atlanta.
Yeah, that answered my next question, which was how you adjusted your training. And I was actually in Colorado over the summer and got to run on the iconic Magnolia Road, which
What'd you
was
think?
a lot of fun. Oh, it was very challenging. We started on the Nederland side, and then so coming back was a lot more difficult than going out.
Yeah, that's the thing, because we do it from the Boulder side, and so boy, it's just kind of kicking you in the teeth from the gun, because it's this long climb up and it's just constantly rolling. But you get it, you get a little bit of a break on the way back, so you can usually get rolling. I don't envy people having to do it the other way.
So it's race day. You decided you were unsponsored going into the race, and Nike was giving away Alpha Flies to everybody racing. And so you decided to race in the Alpha Flies, which I think I heard you say in an interview, you called them the Chunky Boys.
Oh, that's what Sidious Magazine, that's their thing. They call them the Chunky Boys.
Oh, right.
I call them trampoline. Well, I guess I call the Vaporfly trampolines, because after Chicago, I don't know, you put either one of those or any of the new kind of carbon plate shoes on, and it's so springy. It feels a little bit like cheating. But yeah, so I had run Chicago in the Vaporfly. I had a pair of Vaporflies with me in Atlanta, but I knew that they were giving away Alpha Flies. One of my friends worked on the design team for the Alpha Fly, and then I have a couple of friends as part of Bowerman Track Club that run for Nike. And they all said, yeah, the Alpha Fly feels pretty good, but you should probably make the decision yourself, because it's not the Alpha Fly is necessarily better. It's just going to be different. But yeah, I tried it on the day before, and it immediately felt better. And I knew that it was going to be, I was confident that it was going to be a better shoe for kind of my stride. There's like a slight difference in the way the sole feels on your foot.
So could you walk us through that race, and what were your thoughts on the starting line, how it felt battling the insane wind, hills, and then the last few miles just to fight to get back up to the group and qualify? Just go deep dive into this race.
Yeah. So going in, I had the fourth fastest qualifying time. Didn't mean a ton, because like the guys, there was a group of guys that I was technically faster than, but like I beat Gerald Mock in Chicago by 1 second. So yes, it's the fourth fastest time, but like a few seconds here or there in a marathon isn't a whole lot. So there was a group of probably, I don't know, you say 15 guys that we were kind of eyeing as like they're probably going to be the ones to watch. And so going into the race, we knew that it was going to be a punishing course, right? So like if you got too excited early on, it was really going to make you pay for it, right? When we were in LA for the 2016 trials, pancake flat. So you could maybe get away with going after it a little bit. Whereas in Atlanta, right, all those hills, and then you found out the wind, anyone going solo was going to have a bad day, probably, especially if they went early, and you saw that. Schrader paid for it. And then, yeah, essentially anybody leading or anybody trying to go solo was probably going to have a bad time. And anybody going out aggressive was probably going to have a bad time. That being said, if someone that we thought was going to be a competitor, so like Galen, any one of the Army guys, Jared, somebody like that, decided they were going to make it a fast race, a group was probably going to go with them. And if a group was going to go with them, you kind of had to be in that group because you can't count on everybody dying. So as the race started, the main thing was, is anybody going to really try and get after it? Early on, nobody did. And so it was like, and then Schrader went, but he wasn't one of the people we had. I was really worried about at that time. No offense to him. So it was mostly, I was mostly keying off of what's Galen going to do, what's Leonard Career going to do, what's Jared going to do, what's Scott Fauble going to do. And because they were all in the pack, it's like, okay, I know what kind of race this is going to be. Championship racing, a lot of time it's, you know, you spend a lot of time trying to stay contained until it's time to kick. And that's kind of how it played out. So it was mostly, honestly, like, what was it, a 3-lap course? Yeah, it's a 3-lap course. The first 2 laps were pretty boring. It was mostly just stay in this pack, stay as tight in as you can. Anybody that like got exposed to the wind, like I remember going out the first time, there's this long straightaway as you head away from the city. And there's no, once you got out of the buildings, the wind was coming just completely side on. And as soon as you got exposed to the wind, you saw the entire pack move across the side of the road because that wind was just howling. So the main goal was stay tucked in so that you're not dealing with any of this wind. Don't get tripped up. There was like 30 guys in the pack, which you never see in a marathon. So a lot of it was just about keeping your footing. Like I didn't take my first water bottle because we knew that just getting access to the tables was, there's a good chance you were going to fall. And a bunch of people did fall. So we just wanted to stay out of trouble. Don't trip up, get your fluids, and just be ready for when the race goes. At the same time, because it was such a punishing course, talking with Lee beforehand, we kind of made this goal, like, you're not going to do anything until 18. After 18, if people are making moves, that's when you go. And so you come through after that second loop, and Galen he puts in a surge, and you know everybody's keying off of Galen. So I think, what was it, like Sam Chalanga, the Army guys, Abdi, a couple of the guys go with that surge, and that starts to string things out. But we weren't at 18 yet. We were still like, I think 15 miles or something like that. So I decided to not cover that move. Also, I felt pretty good about it because Jared was still there, Scott was still there, Chris Derrick was still there. Those were some of the other guys. Like, they are very consistent runners. They're very good at strategy and kind of conserving energy for the right moment in a race. That's kind of what they're known for. And so I was like, this is the kind of race I want to run. I want to be competing against these guys. I think a lot of people that are going with this pack aren't going to be able to hold it. So we're going to take a risk here. We're going to let that front pack go. So the race started to string out. So I guess I was in I guess it would have been the chase pack at that point. I don't know. Things were so spread out that there were a bunch of different packs. I was also starting to have a little bit of intestinal distress. I was a little bit concerned about my ability to get through the race without an accident. But I ended up taking my gel at like 15 miles or something like that. And it settled some things down, which was nice. So packs start to coalesce. A couple guys come back, and it looks like there's this pack with Galen up front. There's a couple people that have been dropped from that pack. And then there's the chase, which at that point was maybe, I don't know, 10 or 12 people. And I was feeling pretty good, especially after my stomach calmed down. So you go out this long straightaway, you do a hairpin turn, you come back in towards the city. And as we come back into the city, it's gradually uphill. And I don't know, they were probably half a mile ahead at that point, somewhere around there. I don't know. I'd mostly lost sight of them. And it was getting to the point, I think we were at like 18, 19, 20, 21 miles. It was coming, if you don't make your move now, it's going to be too late to catch them. I was kind of hoping that I wasn't going to have to be the one to make that move. I was kind of hoping that other people would sense it and I'd have a group to go with me, because I didn't want to lead. I didn't want to have to kind of be the pacemaker into the wind up a hill. So I was testing the group a little bit to see if I could get something going. And anytime I would accelerate a little bit, no one would go with me. And so I could tell that maybe Jared wasn't having the best day. Same thing with Chris, same thing with Scott. So it was like, all right, I guess we're doing this solo. And so just put the head down, lean into the hill, and just start pressing. And at that point, it was, this is the make or break move. Either you're going to hold this kick. I mean, it's 6 miles out, so I don't really kick at that point. But like, you're either going to hold this kick and you're going to catch that group, or you're going to die a long, painful death. Right? It's going to go either way. But the nice thing was that I didn't know at the time, but Galen had broken his pack. Right? So he put in another surge, and 𝙃𝙤𝙧𝙖𝙬𝙖𝙮, Leonard Career, Augustus Mayo, and I think a couple other guys were in that pack. He'd broken them. He'd put in some separation. And so they slowed down quite a bit. And I think it was essentially, we're not going to get Galen. So at this point, it's 4 or 5 guys for 2 spots. We're going to conserve our energy, and we're just going to race each other at the end. Because I think they thought no one was going to come back to them. So they started slowing down. I was accelerating. And so I could see myself making gains on them, because I started running they slowed down, back down to like 5-minute pace. I was clicking off 4:45s. I had some nice steep downhills. We finally got to some downhills, so I could really get rolling, and I could just see them coming back to me. And then at about 23 miles in, I was pretty confident I was going to be able to get them. I could see where they were. I know I'm going to catch them. So you finish the loop, and then you have this one kind of little add-on that you haven't done before on the course, but you essentially go out and you come back, and then it's going to be, I think, like a mile into the finish. And so 24 miles is kind of at the very end of this hairpin turn. I finally caught the group, and getting caught in a race and having to respond is really, really hard, especially when you've already been broken once. And so my goal catching that group was like, you can't stop, right? It would have been really nice to just kind of tuck in and let them lead. But Leonard Career, I think, has run 59:47 for a half marathon. He's like a 27:13 10K guy. I didn't want to have to come down to a kick with Leonard. 𝙃𝙃𝙧𝙖𝙬𝙀, yes, he's old, but his PRs are very, very good. They're better than mine. Same thing with Augustus. I didn't want to have a kick with any of them. So the goal was like, get to this group and then just try and break them. So get to them and put in a move. I didn't put in hard enough of a move because 𝙃𝙃𝙧𝙖𝙬𝙀 and Leonard both went with me. So I only dropped Augustus. Leonard dropped back maybe 10 meters. But it was one of those things where he just would never quite leave. And then 𝙃𝙃𝙧𝙖𝙬𝙀, it would be one of those things where I would try to drop him on a downhill. He would try and put in a move on an uphill. So it'd be like, I'd get a little gap, and then he'd get a little gap. And then I'd get a little gap, and he'd get a little gap. And he just wasn't dropping. And so eventually kind of came around to the realization, like, neither one of us is strong enough at this point to drop the other one. And so anybody that tries to take the lead is just going to be doing work for the other person. So at this point, we got 3 guys here. 2 of them are going to make this team. It's going to be whoever kicks last, basically. So it's kind of conserve my energy, just try to be the last one with a kick. And so the way the course goes, you kind of have this long curve, and then you take a left, and it's this downhill with maybe, 150 meters to the straightaway. And it was just me right next to 𝙃𝙃𝙧𝙖𝙬𝙀 neck and neck. And I'd been testing him a little bit, and I felt like I had maybe a little bit more of a spring in my leg. So I felt like if it came down to a kick, I could beat him. Leonard's doing something back there. I don't know where he is. I'm just going to focus on beating 𝙃𝙃𝙧𝙖𝙬𝙀, and Leonard's going to do what he's going to do. And so, just took the momentum of that last little downhill, put in a 5-meter gap, and never lost it, and crossed the line in second.
And with 600 meters left or so, someone was handing out American flags, and you grabbed one.
Yeah.
What were you thinking when you grabbed one?
I imagine everybody watching this race or watching this video has been at the end of a race, and you know that like things get a little bit foggy when you're tired. So like the thought process wasn't real coherent at that point. It was mainly because you see people get the flags at the end of races at every trials, and then like they get to do their victory lap and they're waving the flags, and that's like a really cool thing. So I was like very excited for that idea. It was mostly that somebody was holding something out, and so it was like, well, when somebody's holding something out to you, you grab it. So part of it was just instinct. It was like, oh, I guess I'm supposed to take this thing. The other thing that I was thinking at the time was like, they wouldn't be handing this flag if there was any doubt that I was going to make the team. Like if it was in question, like if there's 3 people for 2 spots, well, one of them is not going to make it. So it would be crazy to just hand a flag to a person, because if they didn't make it, that'd be super embarrassing. And so in the moment, I was like, oh, I must have made the team. Great. I'll take this flag and I'll have something to wave when I cross the line. And then I immediately realized that like, well, no, these are probably volunteers. They were just told to hand out a flag when the next 2 people came. Leonard's probably still back there. You might not have this thing set up. So I immediately regretted it. But but it was a little bit too late at that point. So I just kind of crumpled it up my hand and went through. It ended up working out, but that could have been like a Sports Center not top 10 type of move, because that's really, really calling your shot. It's like that Oregon runner that celebrated line and got beat. Like, I did not want to be known as that guy, and luckily I'm not. And so instead, it's just a nice story.
Well, that day I was watching the race at home, and I had never heard of you until then. And it seemed like the announcers also had not heard of you. And they only seemed to know you because they said, and there's Jacob Riley. He's wearing the red shorts. Watch for him. He's wearing the red shorts.
Here is Riley. He'll be easy to spot in those red shorts, and he's got his eyes on that pack of 3.
And when I was telling my dad that there's this guy who is not he's not with the main pack, and he's fighting back and in contention to qualify, he said, like I said, it's Jacob Riley, and he said, who's that? And I said, well, it's the guy with the red shorts.
Yeah, that's I mean, that's, to be honest, that's fair. So, you know, I think I was on some lists as like a dark horse to make the team. Like, if things go right, this is one of the guys. And that's about where I should have been. You know, I've run good times, solid times, but compared to some of the other guys in the field, like, I shouldn't have been on any favorites list, and I wasn't. And, you know, I had a day out. Like, I had a really good race. I showed up on that day. You know, I think I just didn't have enough of a history going in for anybody to come to any other conclusion that you know, maybe if he has a good day. And I did. So yeah, it makes sense that I was unknown, and it makes sense that I was the guy in the red shorts, and it ended up working out, that's the reason you run the race. Now, I will say, I'm going to get on my soapbox about the NBC commentators. It's not surprising they didn't know my name, because I think if you counted, they knew maybe 5 names from that race. Like, in the men's race, they knew Jared, and they knew Galen, and they knew Bernard. That's about it. And in the women's race, they knew Desi. And that's it. Like, to see Sally Kipyego in the lead pack of a marathon and not mention that she's an Olympic silver medalist is absolutely bonkers. I don't understand how you don't comment on that. No background on anybody. Like, I think Kellen Taylor got 1 mention. There's 2 other girls in that NAZ group that's been absolutely crushing it for the last 4 years. How do you not talk about some of them? Like, the coverage just drives me nuts. And I'm not the only person that says it, but I'm going to get on my soapbox here. Like, if you're hired to do color commentary, the least you can do is know some names and have like just a basic CV. Like, send one of your interns to do like an hour's worth of research on Google, and you'll have something to talk about. Like, it's not that difficult. So,
and a marathon,
NBC commentators not knowing my name is pretty par for the course.
A marathon's a long race, so it seems like they should be able to research.
What else are you gonna do? Like, instead of talking about like what Galen had for breakfast a month ago, talk about somebody else for once. It's
So you finished with the PR in 2:10, and so first of all, what were your emotions, and describe the feeling crossing the finish line? Because I saw a video with you and your coach after the race, and it was really cool.
Yes! I told you! Oh my god! Oh! Oh! Oh my god! Oh! A fucking Olympian! Oh my god! Mate, this is the stuff of freaking stories, man. You did it. Oh. This is your moment. Welcome to the club. Welcome to the club.
Yeah, so part of it is just this huge sense of relief. So a lot of times in a marathon, by the time you get to those last 800 meters, last mile, whatever, it's already decided, right? The pack has been broken. You've been on your own. That's how it usually goes. This race was not that. Like, the race was in doubt until like 10 meters to go. And so I was like, I think I'm going to make this team. I feel really good. I'm going to make this team. God, I hope I make this team for, 20 minutes or whatever it had been since I caught that pack. And so I didn't let myself really picture that I was actually on the Olympic team until I crossed that finish line. So one of my favorite videos is crossing the finish line, doing the fist pump. Like a lot of that is just this release of nervous energy because I'd been kind of not letting myself hope for so long. And then finally, yes, I actually freaking did it. And then, yeah, me hugging Lee. We had a guy that was part of our training group. He took his own life about a year earlier, and it was John Gray. It was a guy that I had raced against for a long time. He was one of the reasons I joined this training group. He was a big part of Lee's life, and that really sent our training group, like a lot of people left the team after that. Lee was kind of debating whether or not he even wanted to keep coaching, whether he wanted to leave the sport, which is huge for him. And I was coming back from wondering whether or not I was ever going to be able to race again, let alone be competitive. And so I make the Olympic team. He coached somebody to make an Olympic team. It was kind of like his first big coaching segment back, having decided to keep coaching. And so I think for both of us, like we both went through some pretty tough stuff, and we went through it together, and we kind of helped each other get through it. And so, yeah, it was really, really emotional. So there's sort of the excitement of making the Olympic team, which is, a dream I've sort of had in a vague sense since I was old enough to know what the Olympics were. I think my earliest Olympic memory is the '96 Olympics. Like I remember watching that on TV. And so kind of just thinking about what it was to maybe someday I could be an Olympian in running, kind of had that idea in high school, but it's still very abstract. And then in college, like, well, I'm going to run professionally. Maybe I really could run the Olympics. And then to actually do it after thinking about it for so long, it's just I don't know, dream come true is like a very cliche way to put it, but it's a very exciting experience. And it's just a very, to kind of keep thinking about. And so, yeah, you cross the line, you got the flag wrapped around your shoulder. They're kind of pushing you every which way. People are cheering. The energy in Atlanta was absolutely nuts. Like I remember I was caught on the basically the side of the road. So it was essentially, if I'd taken one more step, I would have been trying to run on the curb. And it was like people 4 deep all the way to the curb, just shouting their heads off to the point where like my ears were hurting. I thought I was like killing hearing cells. It was so freaking loud. And you run down that straightaway and it's only like 3 or 4 people wide. So just the noise and the energy of the people around there is enough to get you stoked. And then you get to get on the podium and you get to shake people's hands. And yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's one of those stories that the comeback story that you can't help but enjoy hearing about and appreciate what you did.
Yeah.
So shortly after the trials was when the COVID-19 pandemic began to shut things down, and later the Olympics got postponed to next year. Do you feel like you have benefited from the postponement, or do you wish that it had been in 2020 because you'll be older next year, or do you think that the extra year will help with recovery?
Yeah, it is a little bit of a mixed bag because I was coming off of the trials, like just a real energy high, a momentum high. Like I'm freaking stoked. We're going to have all these races. We're going to have sponsorship opportunities. We're going to do all these cool things. And then that all gets kind of just washed away. Now, when I came back, I had some knee pain, and then I had some hip pain, and then I had some peroneal pain. So I think that race beat up my body a little bit more than I initially thought. So, how much kind of stuff I've had to work through since the trials tells me like, yeah, maybe it was good to have a little bit more time to recover from that race. And you see that with a lot of people. Like, Jared took a long time coming back. Scott Faubles had a long time coming back. Molly had to drop out of a couple races. Like Alaphine's still dealing with some stuff. Like that course was really hard on the body. And so I think having some time to recover from that was good. Also, one of the big things I've noticed is, I took 3 years where I basically wasn't able to train at a high level. So I was able to do aerobic stuff, but really no speed. So I've definitely lost a step at kind of that top end. I just don't have that fast gear like I used to. And so one of the things we've been able to focus on is getting on the track, doing a little bit less volume, and trying to do kind of that high end speed stuff, which, I'm a marathoner, so it's not that impressive, but like I ran 27 in the 200 for the first time in 5 years or whatever the hell it was, which is a big deal for me. So getting back to trying to get those type 2 fibers back and really trying to, get some more speed in my legs. And I think that's going to help. So able to focus on some stuff that we might not otherwise have been able to focus on. That being said, that's not worth the trade-off. I would have preferred to have had the Olympics in 2020. Also, right, we're seeing spikes again. So like, there's still a little bit of concern as to whether or not the Olympics are even going to go off, right? It seems that they had everything taken care of. By the time August rolls around, we should be good, but there's still that kind of nagging doubt in the back of my mind. Well, is it going to go off? And I don't like having that. So I would have preferred to have it in August. But yeah, the silver lining, more time to prepare, more time to get my body right. I had my Chicago buildup, I had my trials buildup, and then it was going to go straight into the Olympic buildup, which is not a lot of time after the amount of time that I took off. So this is, essentially a whole other year to get stronger, get some more miles on my legs, hopefully get my body ready to be more competitive. So I think for me, it has as many positives as anybody else. And, as far as age, 34 is the aerobic peak. So I'm not super concerned with that. I think there's some positives to be taken from it. I think it'll help me a decent amount.
Yeah, I thought I just read something a few days ago that the Olympic Committee is, I think they won't postpone it again. I think they might. I don't know. I mean, you're the Olympian, so, or
right.
future Olympian.
The reason I go like that is like, if they're not going to postpone it, but COVID spikes,
Yeah,
which means cancellation, which would be absolutely devastating.
Yeah.
They seem pretty committed to making sure it goes off, and right, we see how the NFL has handled it versus how NBA has handled it versus how like Euro soccer leagues have handled it. I think we'll have a pretty good track record by the time we get to the Olympics as to just what needs to be done to keep everybody safe. So I think they'll have a pretty good handle on it. I feel pretty confident it'll go off.
I think I lost you for a second there.
Yeah, sorry, my computer died. We've been talking.
It's...
I had it off battery. I thought I could make it through. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
We're in a different room now.
Great. Is that the American flag from the trials?
Yes, it is. That's the American flag.
Wow.
I got the trials poster. I got the trials medal. Yeah, it's my little wall. I make sure it's in the back for my Zoom meetings.
In July, you finally got sponsored, and it was with an up-and-coming shoe company, On, and I hadn't heard of them I hadn't really heard of them until a few months before. Were you at all nervous to sign with a lesser known brand, and did you get any offers from other companies? And if so, why did you choose On over the other offers?
Yeah, it's one of those things, 2-3 years earlier, there wouldn't have been any hesitation at all, because the technology, pretty much everybody had the same stuff. And then all of a sudden the Vaporfly and the Alphafly and this whole, the carbon plated shoe thing, all of a sudden it's a game changer. So if you're with a company that doesn't have one of those or isn't committed to developing one of those, like, you're at a significant disadvantage. I don't think there's a whole lot of doubt about that. And On, they're a little bit behind where Nike or Brooks or Saucony are in terms of the development. So yeah, I mean, it's like a little bit of a concern that, like, yeah, we need to have this carbon shoe in order for me to be competitive. At the same time, like, in talking with the guys that were recruiting me and the engineers and everything, like, they're very committed to developing that shoe. And one of the things I was most excited by signing with On is, like, it's a young company and I'm kind of one of their bigger marathon athletes. So, like, I get to have a pretty significant say in the direction these shoes take. So, as opposed to like a Nike or a Saucony where I'm just one of many athletes, and especially at Nike, like, get lost in the shuffle when they have like Kipchoge out there crushing things. Like I get to have a say in the shoes. I get to have like a direct line to the engineers. I get to have a direct line to the marketing director. Like I've had conversations with like the president and vice president of the company, which is not something I'd get at another company. So yeah, just they said like, yes, we want to have a really direct partnership with you. We want you to have a say in the development of the shoes. We want to take care of you and to kind of develop you as an athlete. So they also gave me a longer deal than I might have been able to get elsewhere, which is really nice. So, you know, in case I run into injury issues or you want to take a year to develop or something like that, like I have the flexibility to do that. I'm essentially taken care of through the next Olympics. So I think as far as development and, you know, kind of having a working relationship on is a really nice fit. One of the reasons I didn't sign with anybody before the trials was I moved here to Boulder without the expectation of having a sponsor. So I set up my life in such a way that I didn't need a sponsor to do what I wanted to do. I ran Chicago. I was very successful without having a sponsor. So essentially the thinking was, if we're going to sign with someone, it needs to be the kind of situation where it allows me to do something that I wasn't able to do when I was training on my own. There needs to be something brought to the table that isn't like just money or just gear or something like that. And so this collaborative relationship, I think is, you know, that's not something I would have been able to get elsewhere.
And lastly, I have some rapid fire questions. These are from my audience, and you can answer them in as much detail as you wish. And I'm going to call this segment the home straightaway. So what is next for Jacob Riley, both on and off the course?
We have an Ekiden coming up in Michigan. And then a week later, also in Michigan, hosted by the Hansons, we have a half marathon. So 2 races within a week. I'm really excited about this half. I've been farting around on the track long enough. It's been all 1500s. I'm glad to get back to a real race. So really excited for that half marathon. That's on the track. Off the track, I'm still doing grad school right now. So I'm like really in the dog days of problem sets and papers and stuff. So hopefully the next thing up is to not be doing that. I get to graduate in the spring. So those are kind of the big things I'm focusing on right now.
Will we see you at Big 7 in Davenport, Iowa again in the future?
I hope so. I love that race. You talk about not being excited to go back to, or people not necessarily getting excited to go to Iowa. That's a great course to take care of you. Yeah, I go back to Vegas in a heartbeat. And I think we were thinking about going back there this year, but then obviously everything got canceled. So if they'll have me, I'll go.
Which is more impressive, the sub-2 marathon or the moon landing?
He made it look too easy, so I'm going to go with the moon landing.
And then
yeah, I feel like Kipchoge, he ran 159, but like he's jogging it in.
Yeah,
show me 158.
Smiling after the race and didn't seem that tired.
Guys stopping their watches and kind of waving to the crowd as they're going to the finish line. Records aren't hard to get anymore, apparently.
And I guess similar to that, do you think the Vaporflies, Alphaflies, carbon fiber plate shoes should be banned?
No, I think that cat's out of the bag at this point. So I don't know that banning is going to do anything. I do kind of wish they were never developed. I don't like the idea that there's like this asterisk if I'm comparing my time in a carbon plated shoe. Like when I beat Lee's record, and I am going to beat Lee's PR at some point. When I beat his PR, I don't want there to be any doubt because I know as soon as I beat that, he's going to say, well, it's because he had the shoes. And I don't want him to have that excuse. And I want to be able to like look back at what Bill Rogers was running or whatever and be able to compare my time to theirs and not have this kind of little asterisk. So I like the idea of like taking technology to see just how far we can kind of push human ability, but I'm not excited. I don't think these are really good for the sport. You know, I think this playing field is going to level out pretty soon, and I don't know, they're going to be bad for the sport. It's just going to be kind of how it is. Banning I think it's a little bit late for that.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It just seems like if you choose not to race in the alpha flies, then you are at a disadvantage against your competitors. So, what do you think is more important for running, strength of the mind or strength of the body?
I'm trying to think of a way to answer this question that is actually insightful. I think it's strength of the mind. I mean, you need to have both to compete at the highest level, but like you do see a lot of talented people out there that like they can't commit to putting in the work. I think it's easy to be talented. It's hard to be good, and to make that jump, there's a mental strength that you need, right? All the talent in the world isn't going to do anything for you if you aren't able to like just put in the miles to be the best at it. And so, and that's a mental part, like the commitment to kind of the long haul of improvement. That's all mental strength. So yeah, I'm going to go with the mental.
So, what is something that you enjoy doing that people would not expect you to enjoy?
Oh, I was going to say trivia, but I am a Stanford engineering nerd, so trivia I feel like is a little bit too much in my wheelhouse. I'm a big fan of Bob Ross. I have the Bob Ross paint set, so every once in a while to unwind, I like to do myself a little Bob Ross painting.
Happy little
wet
trees.
technique. Yeah, happy little trees. They need a friend.
What inspires you?
I'm going to take that to be, why do I keep showing up? Right? Because running, in comparison to a lot of other sports, running is not particularly fun a lot of the time. So, the reason that I keep running and kind of committed to being a professional runner is I find it really satisfying and just really rewarding to see just how far I can push my limits and just how good I can be. And I think that's true not just in a running context, but essentially in anything. I think to try to be as good as you can be at something, whether that's running or basketball or the cello or art or whatever it is, pushing your limits and seeing just how far you can go with something, I think is a really rewarding and special experience, and that's what keeps me coming back. That, and it's also fun.
And then I wanted to ask you this. I meant to ask you earlier, but do you have any specific goals for the Olympic marathon?
I think of myself as pretty comparable with Jared Ward. We are the same year, like we've been racing since high school. I think of us as pretty similar runners in terms of our strengths and our style of racing. And he got sixth in Rio. So that's kind of the bar I've set for myself. That's a high bar. I think I think top 10 would be a very good day out, but like Jared got sixth, that's the goal. Sixth or better. And it's championship racing. There's certainly more than 6 guys with PRs better than mine. Yeah, they're going to be at this race, but I think that's reasonable. I think that's doable. So that's the goal.
I think stretch goals are really good to set, and it'll be interesting to watch you race Kipchoge to like be in the same race as him on the starting line. I'm guessing the NBC announcers though still won't say much about you.
Oh no,
it'll be all Kipchoge.
I'm probably going to have a pretty similar strategy to what I did at the trials. Like with the field that's assembled, first of all, I'm not going to be intimidating anybody by like taking it out hard. One, nobody knows who I am, and two, nobody cares. I'm like the number 2 guy from the American team. Like they're keying off each other. So like me taking the lead, trying to like dictate the pace of this marathon is a ridiculous strategy. I'm all for kind of setting high goals for yourself, but like I'm not going to do anything. So going to be tucked in. I'm going to be behind. I will be in the race with Kipchoge. I don't know that I will be racing Kipchoge, if that makes sense. Unless, right, like, at least early on in the race, like, I'm not going to dictate my pace or my strategy based on what Kipchoge is doing. He's going to have very different goals for what he wants to get out of this. And, like, if he decides to make the pace fast, pace is going to be fast. If he decides to go slow, pace is probably going to be slow because I think everybody's going to be keying off of him. So, like, we go in with very different perspectives. It's kind of the same way in college. Technically, I raced Galen a lot, but I didn't really race him because we had very different ideas for what we wanted out of it. So it'll be fun to be on the start line, and hopefully things shake out that, like, 6 miles to go, Kipchoge's in sight, or like we're in the same pack, and then we'll be racing. But I'm not going to go with the idea that, like, I'm going to show a 2-hour marathoner the ropes.
So this is the last question. I don't want to take much more of your time. What advice do you give to all runners, no matter their ability, who may be watching this video right now?
I'm going to plagiarize 𝙎𝙧𝙖𝙬𝙬𝙗 and say, keep showing up. Running sucks sometimes, and it's great sometimes. And to get through the sucky times, you keep showing up, and you know the good ones are going to come back around. So, keep showing up. I don't know. She's one of my favorite runners, so I will paraphrase her anytime I get the chance.
Well, Jake Riley, thank you so much for speaking to me today and coming on the channel. I'm really excited to watch you race in Tokyo and watch the rest of your running career. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Hey, thanks, man. And thanks for having me on.
Thank you for watching all the way through this episode. It was produced by Parker Max, and I'd like to thank Jake Riley for making it possible and agreeing to be interviewed. I hope you guys found this as interesting and inspiring as I thought it was. I would also like to thank my brother Quentin Max just for being my brother. And I heard that he recently had a movie night with some of his dorm mates in college, and they watched Toy Story, and let's just say it must have been a roller coaster.
We went through it together, and we kind of helped each other get through it. And so, yeah, it was really, really emotional.
Today's inquiry of the episode: who would you like to see on the Parker Max YouTube channel? Because I'm going to be starting a series, and I don't think I would be able to get some of the big names, the big names, like Kipchoge or 𝙎𝙧𝙧𝙖𝙬𝙬𝙗, of course. I wouldn't be able to get them. Or the Ingebrigtsens, probably wouldn't be able to get them. Maybe some of the less elite elites. So let me know below who you would like to see, if you have any favorite runners that aren't necessarily at the very top of the running world. Anyways, thanks again for watching. Live life to the max, run to the max, and I will see you in the next video. Have a great day.